الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I asked Sheikh Nashat how much you guys covered for the ahkam of Siyam, and he said ahkam of Siyam and what breaks the Siyam, and these things have been covered. So we can also still review some of the things inshallah, but I thought for now between Maghrib and Isha we'll go through the ahkam of Salat al-Taraweeh, the rulings of Salat al-Taraweeh. So this is a fiqh session, inshallah, with ahkam of Salat al-Taraweeh and some of the things about the tatawwu' or the optional salah. And to take it in a serious way, forgive me that I didn't say that ahead of times, but I'll go through the book of Ar-Rawd al-Murbi'. Ar-Rawd al-Murbi', and this is a Hanbali book in fiqh, just to make sure that we mention the masail there and we try to cover it as much as we can, inshallah, if you want to follow that, inshallah. We won't go through every single word, but just to give us some of the things that is mentioned in general, all the masail that is mentioned in there. And Salatul Taraweeh or Salatul Qiyam, Salatul Taraweeh is unique for Ramadan as far as the name is concerned. It's always mentioned in the books of fiqh, not in Kitab al-Siyam, not in the chapter of fasting, but in Salatul Tatawwu'. In Salatul Tatawwu', and the Tatawwu' is the optional salah or the recommended salah or other than the fard salah. And the word at-tatawwu', when you're volunteering doing something, it's not an obligation. It's something that means people should do the best they can so that they do it, not to avoid it because it's not an obligation, rather to do it, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever does it gets great rewards from Allah, and whoever doesn't do it, there's no sin upon them. But the ulama in the books of fiqh, they say whoever leaves the tatawwu', even though this is not sinful, but there is some form of a ta'deeb or reprimanding the person should be done. Because why would a person leave the recommended acts of worship altogether? This is not a good sign, especially if it's something that is very stressed. And of course, the hadith of Al-A'rabiyya, the one, the Bedouin that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he asked for the obligations, and the Prophet ﷺ told him the Salawatul Khams, and he said, I won't do more or less. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أفلح وأبيه إن صدق. He is successful, him and his father, if he's truthful. If he's truthful, he's successful. And this is the level of al-muqtasid, the level of the believers, those who would do the obligations and stay away from haram. But this is, to know this knowledge is so that a person does not have to expiate for a sin if he leaves something recommended. But the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they would do the best they can so that they do both the obligatory act of worship and the recommended acts of worship, and the levels of ilm, that a person excel himself with asking the people of knowledge if there is more than one act of tatawwu', recommended acts of worship, which one to do before what, which is more virtue. It can be, there is in general, in the absolute sense, there are things more virtuous than others. But also for individuals, it can be different. And I'm not studying the book yet but this is important when it comes to matters of fiqh. This is tijara ma'allah. This is a trade with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, Umratun fi Ramadan ta'dilu hijjah ma'i. Making Umrah in Ramadan is equal to Hajjah with the Prophet ﷺ. But the Prophet ﷺ did not make Umrah in Ramadan. But he said ﷺ that it's equal to making Hajj with the Prophet ﷺ. So there is no doubt that this is such a great deed to make Umrah in Ramadan. One of the good things to be done in Ramadan is to make Umrah. But for the Prophet ﷺ, can someone says, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, that the Prophet ﷺ did not do the most recommended act in Ramadan? No, no way. The Prophet ﷺ, for him, he did the most rewardable acts in Ramadan. So for the Prophet ﷺ, for example, in Medina, to be in Medina and to lead the people in Medina and to make i'tikaf, for example, in Ramadan in Medina, this is more virtue to the Prophet ﷺ with the circumstances than to travel, for example, to make Umrah in Ramadan and come back. And that's why even some of the ulama, they mention that for individuals In the past, for example, if you go make Umrah for Ramadan, in Ramadan, you might waste many days in Ramadan, for example, in traveling. So when you compare Umrah in Ramadan with wasting, I don't want to maybe use the word waste, but the many days of Ramadan will be in traveling and transit and things like this, versus someone is in Medina, for example, or in other place where he is busy the day and night with ibadah in Ramadan. Which is more recommended? I'm not saying an answer, but I'm just saying that there's for some individuals, some actions might be more rewardable than others for that specific individual, versus what is in the absolute sense, what is more rewardable. So that requires ilm, and to be close to the people of knowledge, and sometimes the circumstances would make things different, inshallah ta'ala. And that's why what is the best rewardable act of tatawwu' after the obligations? There's differences of opinions among the ulama, but it's a good differences of opinions. Here, according to the madhab, and it's what's mentioned, is the first thing is أفضل ما يتطوع به الجهاد. الجهاد في سبيل الله. This is, if it's not an obligation, this is the best according to the rulings of it. ثم النفقة فيه, then spending for the sake of Allah. ثم after الجهاد ثم تعلم العلم وتعليمه. The second one is to teach, to learn knowledge and to teach knowledge. This is the most rewardable act after the obligation. And al-ilm, or learning knowledge, if it's a mandatory knowledge, then it's a mandatory act of ubudiyyah to Allah. You have to learn what is mandatory for you to do. So ثم تعلم العلم وتعليمه. And then it says من حديث وفقه وتفسير, and so on. So this shows the virtue of al-ilm, and that's why people seeking knowledge versus making optional salah, which is more rewardable, seeking knowledge. But it doesn't mean that they don't make optional salah, because nobody is going to spend the entire night seeking knowledge. But if someone would have to choose which one or the other, definitely seeking knowledge. And when a person seeks knowledge, he would make more salah. And this is the barakah and the blessings of ilm, because the ilm is to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And that's why Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, when someone spent the entire night and he saw that the water was the same with wudu, and he realized that he did not use the water for wudu, he said, Talib ilm, student of knowledge, and he doesn't have a share in the night to make salah, it doesn't go together. Because following the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So talabul ilm, and shows the virtue of al-ilm. Then thumma salah. Then after talabul ilm, in rewards, is as-salah, and the salah is the best subject. As-salatu khayru mawdu', which shows again how we should, if someone has the ability to learn, he should occupy his time, whatever he has, for learning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also performing the salah. And the salah helps the person and bless his time by the will of Allah to gain ilm. In salat al-tatawwu', what is the most rewardable one? أكدها كسوف ثم استسقاء. Ulama looked at which is more reward from different perspectives. Here, according to the madhab and others, is the salat al-tatawwu'. We now know al-tatawwu'. I don't have to say optional salah, right? Al-tatawwu', if it's done in jama'ah, according to that one perspective, is more rewardable than the tatawwu' that it's done individually. So Salatul Kusuf, the eclipse, it's done in jama'ah. So they say it's more virtue because the jama'ah is part of that act of salah. And then al-istisqa, asking for rain, because it's also done in jama'ah. Thumma Taraweeh, then the Taraweeh. So the Taraweeh, according to here, is more of a virtuous act than Sunnah Ratiba, for example, that we do on a daily basis. So the Taraweeh Salah in Ramadan specifically is one of the highest level of rewards when it comes to the optional Salah. ثم Taraweeh. Why? لأنها تسن لها الجماعة. Because the Jama'ah for Salatul Taraweeh is Sunnah. So Salatul Taraweeh in Ramadan, to be prayed in Jama'ah, this is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is one point or one mas'ala here that needs to be clear. If someone would pray alone during the night time of Ramadan versus praying in Jama'ah is more rewardable. This is more according to the Sunnah, because the Prophet ﷺ prayed it in Jama'ah for a few days, and then he والسلام, did not come out after a few days out of the fear that it becomes an obligation upon the people. But the people continued to pray in more than one jama'ah, but they would pray it in jama'ah. So they knew that this is a night prayer that is different than the rest of the year. And that's why for people to make Salatul Layl, Qiyamul Layl, in other than Ramadan jama'ah, this is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, unless it happens without any preparation, without any intentional getting together. So if someone is praying at night and someone comes and joins with him in Salah, even if he's in the masjid, someone in the masjid making Salah, and someone wants to join with him, sure, there's no problem. Or even people, let's pray 2 rak'ah jama'ah, like that, no problem. Or people at home, the husband and wife, things like this. But to organize jama'ah prayer in the masjid, other than Salawat al-Fard, some people even, they do that for the duha prayers, which is innovations in the deen. They sit, they pray Fajr, and after Fajr they sit to sunrise, and then they stand in jama'ah and they pray Salat al-Duha. This is not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And the same thing with the Salatul or Qiyamul Layl. Like some people, for example, they bring the youth in the masjid Friday night or Thursday night or whatever nights, and to get them to be in the masjid, so they make Qiyamul Layl. This is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's only for Salatul Taraweeh. But if they come in the masjid and they seek knowledge or this and that, and then let's pray 2 rak'ah. Sure, if it's happened like that one time, not for any particular reason, but they want to pray together, it's not bid'ah in that sense. But to organize it and to make it in a consistent way, this is only in Salat al-Taraweeh in Ramadan. And it's called Taraweeh because the Taraweeh or the Tarweeha, or taking a break after 4 rak'ah. So they used to take a break after 4 rak'ah to rest because it's a long salah. But in the order of what is recommended, ثم ترويح ثم witr, then the witr. And some said it's witr is more recommended than the tarawih. But again, it's easy order here. The witr salah, it's to be prayed after Salat al-Tarawih, but it's in the entire year, of course, and Qiyamul Layl in the entire year. Salat al-Tarawih is unique in making a jama'ah in Ramadan, in the masajid. Salat al-Witr is the most stressed, or one of the most stressed sunnah. And they quote here the statement of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, that he said, "Man taraka al-witr amdan, fahuwa rajul su." Whoever leaves Salat al-Witr intentionally, he's an evil man. He's not a good person. Even though in the madhab and the majority of Jumhur al-Ilm, that the witr is not wajib, is not mandatory. But it's still, why would a person leave Salat al-Witr intentionally? Especially that and he said, even لا تنبغي أن تقبل له شهادة. They would reject the shahada, the witness of the person that doesn't pray Salat al-Witr. That means there's the issue with his adala, with his being a righteous person if he doesn't pray Salat al-Witr. Because it's the minimum of Salat al-Witr is 1 rak'ah. 1 rak'ah is the minimum of Salat al-Witr. And also mentioned here that أدنى الكمال 3 rak'at. The least perfect way to make witr is 3 rak'ah. The least perfect. Right? More is better, of course. More than 3 is better to make witr. But the least perfect way, or the least complete way to make witr is 3 rak'ah. 1 rak'ah is sufficient. If you make 1 rak'ah witr, you prayed witr. But the best and the norm of the Prophet ﷺ, the least of the best is 3. If you do more, this is more reward, of course. And the Prophet ﷺ prayed it 5 rak'ah, 7 rak'ah, 9 rak'ah, 11 rak'ah. You can pray witr only 11 rak'ah. And the way to make the 11 rak'ah, according to the hadith of how the Prophet ﷺ did it, the hadith of Aisha and others, if it's 11 or 9 or 7, you pray the first, in 11, for example, the first 10. If it's 9 rak'ah, the first 8. If it's 7, the first 6, without any tashahhud. 1 rak'ah after the other. And then for the 6th rak'ah, if you're praying 7 rak'ah witr, if it's 9 rak'ah, in the 8th rak'ah, or in the 10th rak'ah, if you're praying 11 rak'ah, you sit for tashahhud, and then you don't make salam, you get up, and you make the 11th rak'ah, and you make tashahhud, and you make salam. Right? So if this is 11, if it's 9, you pray 8 rak'ah, one after the other, and then you sit for tashahhud. In the 7, I'm sorry, if you make 7, if you make 9 with, you sit in the 8th rak'ah, you make tashahhud, and you get up for the 9th rak'ah, and then you sit, and you make tashahhud, and you make salam. If it's 7, the same thing after the 6th rak'ah. Right? And it's a good thing to do it once in a while. If you find yourself have some energy, right, make witr like this. The Prophet ﷺ did it like that, but not the norm. The Prophet ﷺ, the norm that he would pray witr 3 rak'ah. If it's 5 rak'ah, then, and some also said 7 the same way, with only one tashahhud at the end, without sitting before that. One tashahhud at the end for the 5 rak'ah witr. For the 3 rak'ah witr, either tashahhud and salam after 2 rak'ah, and then tashahhud and salam with 1 rak'ah, or 1 tashahhud at the end of the 3 rak'ah of witr. And both have been authenticated from the Prophet ﷺ. But for the 3 rak'ah witr, the Prophet ﷺ forbade for it to be prayed like Maghrib. And he stated it clearly, ﷺ, that not to make it like Salatul Maghrib. لا تشبهها بالمغرب. Do not make it like Salatul Maghrib, is that you sit for tashahhud after the 2nd rak'ah. So either you make salam after the 2nd rak'ah, or you make it 3 rak'ah with 1 tashahhud at the end. Salatul Witr is to be done, the time of it, from after you pray Salatul Isha till all the way till the time of Fajr, the beginning time of Fajr. So if a person is a traveler and he combined Maghrib and Isha in the time of Maghrib, he can pray Witr right after that. He doesn't have to wait till the time of Isha. It's related to your act of Salah of Isha. If it's done, then the time of Witr starts for that person. The best time for Witr is the last part of the night, but with a condition. It's not also in the absolute sense. Like, see, have the statement, وَآخِرُ اللَّيْلِ لِمَنْ يَثِقْ بِنَفْسِهِ أَفْضَلُ. Very precise. The last part of the night for the one that has, he trusts himself, is better. He trusts himself that he's going to get up at the last part of the night. He knows that he's used to waking up at night, so he's not going to miss Witr. So then for that person, Salatul Witr at the end of the night is better for him. Not for everyone. For someone that sometimes wakes up, sometimes doesn't wake up, he's not really for sure, then it's best for him to pray Witr after Salatul Isha before going to sleep. And there's the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, that the Prophet ﷺ gave him the wasiyah, awsani khalili bithalat. The Prophet ﷺ gave me the wasiyah, the advice to do 3 things, one of which, an utira qabla an anam, that I make my witr before I go to sleep. And even, some said it's because he would sit and study and stay late and things like this. So people here are different again. Some people, they would never miss the last part of the night. So then it's best for them to delay Salatul Witr. They can pray in the beginning of the night and then also at the last part of the night, and to keep the Witr, the last prayer before Fajr. So this is when it's best. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Salatul Layli mathna mathna. The night prayer is 2 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah. We talked about Witr, 11, this is Witr. So don't confuse the 11 rak'ah Witr. If a person prays Witr 11 rak'ah versus Qiyamul Layl 11 rak'ah. This is different. So Salatul Layl mathna mathna, to be prayed 2 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah. Does it have a limit as far as the number is concerned? The hadith Salatul Layli mathna mathna. The night prayer is 2 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah. And then Prophet ﷺ would make Witr, 1 rak'ah or so. So that's why it's permissible, it's jaiz, to make as many number of rak'at as you want. The hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Prophet ﷺ, he did not used to increase more than 11 rak'ah in Ramadan and in other than Ramadan. That's the statement of Aisha radiallahu anha. So to put all of these things together is the 11 rak'ah is more rewardable for those like when we said that the best is the last part of the night for someone that trusts himself that he's going to get up. 11 rak'ah in Ramadan in Taraweeh is better than the 20 or the 36 or the 40 rak'ah for those who would make it long. So if you have people that would pray 11 rak'ah short versus 20 rak'ah short, which one is more virtue? The 20 rak'ah. Because it's more salah. But which is more, and according to the sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ to make the 11 rak'ah long. So, for example, if people recite, and again, there's no specifics of how much to recite in the salah and Taraweeh, but just say if people would recite a juz in 20 rak'ah versus people would recite a juz also in 11 rak'ah, which is more rewardable? Definitely the 11 rak'ah, because of the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. And that's why Sheikh Ibrahim Zidan rahimahullah, when he said which one is more virtue, is according to how the people are. If the people would like to make lots of ruku' and sujood, they cannot stand long, then for them it's better to have 20 rak'ah. But for those who would stand longer, and this is the way of the Prophet ﷺ, this is what is more recommended. Because he said ﷺ, أفضل الصلاة طول القنوت. The best salah is the long standing. So this is definitely what is more recommended if it's long. And again, this is not a matter of dispute. And the time of early generations of Islam, they would pray many rak'ah, as we see in the haram and things like this. So whoever says that praying 20 rak'ah is bid'ah, this is a wrong opinion. It's not bid'ah, right? But to say that it's better to pray 11 rak'ah, yes, especially if it's long. And the imam is to follow the imam. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, من صلى مع إمامي حتى ينصرف كتبت له قيام ليلة. Whoever prays with his imam till he finishes, it will be written, recorded for him, قيام ليلة, that he prayed one night prayer. And whoever prays the entire month, then he fits in the hadith, من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever prays the night prayer in Ramadan, his previous sins will be forgiven, إيمانا واحتسابا, believing in it and seeking rewards from Allah. That reward is attained when a person finishes the entire month, not to miss any day in between. So to make sure that every night a person makes it for the night prayer is to stay with the imam till he finishes, even if there's more than one imam in the salah, meaning the salah is finished and the imam is done with the salah. So if a person, say in the haram, and they're praying 21 rak'ah, right, to stay with them till the end. And even Sheikh Albani rahimahullah, where he used to be very strict with the 11 rak'ah, when he would pray Salatul Qiyam in al-Haram, he would stay till the end, till the imam finishes. And you would find many people after 11 rak'ah, the masjid becomes empty. Of course, this is not an obligatory act of worship, but it's recommended to stay with the imam to guarantee that you get the entire night of salah. So Salatul Layli for the 11 rak'ah. And the Prophet ﷺ, they would pray 4 rak'ah. لا تسأل عن حسنهن وطولهن, as Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, don't ask about how good, perfect these 4 rak'ah and how long. That means it's long and it's good and it's perfect. And then they would rest. That's why it's called Taraweeh. And then they would make the salah again. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when Umar radiallahu anhu gathered them behind one imam, they would stand long, and even before that, so long that they would lean onto sticks because of the long salah. So the long salah, this is not a fard salah. Fard salah, it should be accommodating everyone, the weak and the old and so on. Recommended salah, the Prophet ﷺ did not accommodate for those who pray behind him. And one evidence of that is when Abdullah ibn Mas'ud prayed behind the Prophet ﷺ, Abdullah ibn Abbas, when he was young. And he prayed Al-Baqarah, then Al-Nisa, and then Ali Imran. A long salah, and every ayah that has Jannah, he asked for Jannah, and so on. Because it's optional salah. He can sit. And that's why he said, Amamtu bi amrin su'. I was almost going to do something bad that I would sit and leave the Prophet ﷺ. So if a person is praying behind an imam and the salah is long, and you're healthy and you're strong and everything, and you choose to sit down, there's no harm. It's not invalidating the salah. It's only in the fard that invalidates the salah. That's why the imam should make sure that the salah accommodates everyone, because you cannot sit in Salatul Fard. But Salatul Nafl, you can sit. So if we, in theory, if, again, of course, the ulama, they say in the books of fiqh to accommodate the people and to make it lighter and things like this so that more people would come. But I'm just saying, in principle, if the salah is long, right, and people would, if they're tired, they sit, definitely this is what is best. But the issue with the Salatul Layl in Ramadan, and that's why we need to work on ourselves, it's not about necessarily physically not able to, it's being bored from standing for a long period of time. Otherwise, people sometimes they stand in the parking lot for more than Salat Taraweeh. Or they would stop the Salah and then you find them, you finish the Salah and you find them, maybe some people will be standing in the parking lot for a long time. So it's that's why we need to train ourselves and to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this matter. But in the masajid, again, in the masajid, this is mentioned in the books of fiqh, is to make it easy for the people in Ramadan. Because people come and to make it easy for them and not to make it too long for them. But it's also mentioned in here in the books of fiqh that the ulama istahabbu, and this is from the imma, istahabbu, they liked for the Quran to be recited in Salatul Taraweeh, the entire Quran to be recited, for people to go through the Quran from the beginning to the end. It's not a must, and some said it's not something that should be very strict people doing this, or they feel bad if it doesn't happen, because what really matters is the khushu' in the salah. So again, if you compare two cases, and it's not to belittle someone that is praying with the Quran, with a juz a day, but if someone is praying a juz a day, but he's reciting fast, versus someone that is reciting 2 ruba', 1/4 of the juz, right? But with the reflecting upon the ayat, and the people understand what is being said, and it's affecting their hearts, which one is more rewardable? The one with khushu'. It doesn't mean that everybody should do this. No, but it's not about the juz, it's about, again, the quality of the salah. But it's been the norm that at least a juz is recited so that people will go through the Quran and its blessings, and it's a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is mentioned by the imam of the deen, of course. With Salat al-Witr, still the sunnah is to pray in the first rak'ah Surah Al-A'la, second rak'ah with Surah Al-Kafirun, and the third rak'ah with Qul Allahu Ahad. And al-Qunut in Salat al-Witr, to do it and to not to do it, both are sunnah, and that's other than Ramadan. If a person wants to do it, that's fine, but not to do it in every day, and not to miss it every day. And this is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. In Ramadan, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they made the qunut in the second half of Ramadan. In the second half of Ramadan, because it's more virtue and towards the end than Laylatul Qadr. So they would make from the second half of Ramadan, they would make the qunut. If people make the qunut from the first day, there's no harm. It's not bid'ah or anything like this, even if it's from the first day. But they would do it from the second half, especially from the second half of Ramadan. The qunut is after coming up from ruku', as we know, and this is what is more correct. But before the ruku' is valid. If someone make the qunut, dua qunut before ruku', this is valid, and there's evidence of that. But what is more correct and what's more evidence is after ruku'. And the imam would say the dua loud, and people would say Ameen. And what is masnoon from the hadith of Al-Hasan ibn Ali, the famous dua, Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt. It's important that, and I know you guys, I saw the hadith, you just took that hadith, mashallah. So it's very important to know the meaning of it. And it's very comprehensive, and it covers every matters of goodness in this life and in hereafter in simple words. And if a person really understands what is being said in dua al-qunut, you won't need the long dua that people make in qunut. The dua of the Prophet ﷺ and the qunut used to be, as they say, like the length of Surah Al-Fajr or Surah Al-Layl, something that is not too long, where people, it becomes, again, this is the lots of bid'ah that happens in this category of things, where people make it long, and they would call the dua of Khatm al-Quran. There's no dua for Khatm of the Quran in the Salah, but there's the dua of the Qunut. And if it happened that the Quran got finished, that means it's a virtuous time, yes. So, but the dua is being said is dua al-qunut. No special dua for finishing the Quran in the salah. There's no such a thing from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Outside of the salah, if someone finishes the Quran, Anas radiallahu anhu used to, whenever he finished the Quran, he would gather his family and they would make dua. So if a person does this with his family or so, this is good. A Sahabi used to do that. But not in the salah, that a person would think that there is something called dua al-khatm or khatm al-Quran. It's the dua of the qunut, of the witr. So there's a dua. So a person doesn't have to be worried about it. There is a dua, but it's not dua of khatm al-Quran. It's the dua of the qunut of witr. And the dua by itself, this is, and the etiquettes of it and what is being said in Ramadan and all these types of things is a lengthy matter. But again, it's to follow the way the Prophet ﷺ is what is best. And to say Ameen after the Imam would make the dua, Ameen, Ameen, yes, and you raise your hand. And sometimes people say other things, this is all bid'ah. When they say Haqqan, Nashhad, like this, because the Imam is praising Allah, because not all the dua is asking. So when he's praising, you don't say Ameen. But if you say Ameen, it's okay, if you don't understand what he's saying. But you don't say Haqqan. People say Haqqan, that means for sure. Nashhad, we witnessed. This is all bid'ah because, I mean, where they come up with this, nobody knows. So it's to say Ameen or to be silent if he's praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to, if you, sometimes people, they take the dua personal. Why didn't you make dua for the Muslims in this place? Why didn't you make dua on Muslims in this place? You have to make a list. Right? And this is something that you make dua for the entire ummah, sure. And Umar used to make dua. But to make very specific things, if it's a nazila, yes. If it's a calamity that happened to a specific place or things like this, yes, you can mention something specific. Or you can mention all the different parts of the world, sure, no problem. But to make it an issue of people, they start having grudges towards one another or things like this, or making the dua to get the people to be more excited about something. Like someone, one time he said that, I want the people to wake up. So he's making the dua to be long and involving certain things. This is not what the dua is supposed to be for. He's making the dua like as if it's a lecture to the people. He's giving them a lecture. He's giving them a reminder by the dua. So all kinds of things which is not according to the way the Prophet ﷺ. And there's other than Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt, that also there is authentic from the Prophet ﷺ. Like Allahumma inni a'udhu bi ridaka min sakhatika wa bi'afika min uqubatika wa bika minka la uhsi thana'an alayk. Also it's mentioned, and other things. And then to make salah on the Prophet ﷺ at the end, and that's the end of the dua. The issue of wiping the face after the dua, they always quote the athar from Umar radiallahu anhu, but it's weak. It's not authentic. So after a person finishes the dua, he just put his hands down. What else is it's sunnah with the Salat Taraweeh is to be done in the beginning part of the night. So after Salatul Isha. And this is what they used to do it at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu and afterwards. And if someone wants to pray more towards the other part of the night, sure. But to make sure that a person stays with the Imam till he finishes. If he prays with the Imam, then he can pray 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah later on, or 2 long rak'ah afterwards, but without making another witr, la witran fi layla. And the salah after the Salatul Taraweeh is finished, to make another salah in jama'ah, some said it's permissible, some said disliked it. Because if it's finished, then pray on your own or pray jama'ah at home with the family, there's no harm. And the Prophet ﷺ, either he would pray 11 or 13 rak'ah. There's the narration of 13 rak'ah. So later on, you can make a 2 long rak'ah, for example, at home to occupy the night with salah. So the point here, don't stop yourself from making salah or more salah. If you finish the salah with the Imam and you want to make more salah, sure, but without making another witr. What else is here? Yes, and you can finish the witr with the Imam, and then you pray 2 rak'ah. Or if the Imam makes salam at witr, you can get up and make an extra rak'ah so that it's not witr for you. But the first one is what is best, to finish the salah with the Imam, and then if you want to make more salah, you can make more salah later. Allah. So this is some of the things, and it's not all of the things that happens, but this is in brief with Salatul Layl or Qiyamul Layl. Sunnatul Isha is to be done before that. So after Salatul Isha, people will make Sunnah, pray the Sunnah first, and then they make Salatul Qiyam. There's no Iqamah for Salatul Qiyam, Salatul Taraweeh. There's no Salatul Taraweeh, Yarhamukumullah. This is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to say anything. Just they stand up and the Imam say Istawu and so on, and they make Salah. There's no dhikr to be said between 2 rak'ah or 4 rak'ah. Some people, they make tasbih loud or say other things. It's all bid'ah, it's innovations in the deen. And if people between the rak'at, they can read Quran, they make dhikr on their own, which is the normal thing for a Muslim, or even if there is a reminder, to make the reminders every day in Ramadan as if it's part of the salah. This is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But if it's there is a need for people to be reminded, sure, but not to make people think that this is part of the salah. It's like khutbatul Jumu'ah. Then there need to be a reminder after 4 rak'ah. It's not like this, of course. It's just people are present. So to remind the people, Ramadan is a time where people can change their life and can repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or learn some things in the deen. This is all, as the ulama, they say, it's good from that perspective. In Saraf al-Imam, when the Imam finishes, which I mentioned that yesterday, but it's one of the etiquettes, maybe should be done or mentioned after Salatul Isha or something like this. One of the sunan that is deserted by many people is that people should not leave till the Imam turns after the Salah. And that's al-insaraf. Al-insaraf is not the salam. Hatta yansarif, either it means till he leaves the building, which is not the case, but it means that till he turns. And the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would make salam in the Salah, he would stay for a little bit facing the Qibla. They used to say so that the women in the back, they would leave. And then he would turn ﷺ. So once he turns, then people can start leaving. But as long as he's facing the Qibla, people should still stay in their place. Unless a person has a necessity. But since the Imam is going to turn in just 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then he's going to turn, don't leave till the Imam turns his face to the Ma'mum. And that's why also, according to the time of early generations of Islam, if the Imam would stay long time facing the Qibla, they used to punish him, or because they're stuck. They can't leave when he's just facing the Qibla for a long time. So he has to, this is the time, this is the break where they can leave. So this is an etiquette that should be observed. So the same thing for Qiyam, for Taraweeh. When the Imam finishes, then he turns or he leaves. That means he departed from the Salah, and people then they can leave. This is inshallah for some of the ahkam of Qiyamul Layl and the Witr. And talk about the i'tikaf later, inshallah ta'ala. To ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all witness the month of Ramadan and to help us and to guide us. And this is ahkam of fiqh, but there's things to be done in the heart and things to be done for the sake of Allah. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, imanan wa ihtisaban, believing in it, wa ihtisaban. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept, and we'll talk about also the meanings of that inshallah ta'ala later.